Schwarber hits it a ton, into right, at the wall, another grand slam.
It's Kenley Jansen. And first ball swinging.
Oh,
and it gets through. And here comes the winning run. Swanson scores, and the Braves.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 74 of Sports Speak. Hope you're doing well. I'm Eddie Kalegi. No Tim Moore today. He'll be back for our next episode, but we do have a guest here. This is Alex Feuz from the Whole New Ball Game podcast to talk some Major League Baseball playoffs because it's been very exciting to watch so far. Alex, thanks for joining us today on Sports Speak.
Eddie, thanks for having me. Excited to talk some baseball with you.
So before we get to the ALCS and NLCS, which we talked about have been quite compelling so far, of course, there have been some teams already bounced from the postseason, and one of those is the New York Yankees, who have made some headlines this morning, in fact, because the team announced that Aaron Boone will be returning. He has a 3-year contract with an option, so they are clearly committing to Aaron Boone for the long term. Of course, there have been some Yankee fans who have had some outcry against bringing back Aaron Boone, but of course, Aaron Boone has not been the only issue with this team. There's been the players as well. The manager can only do so much. And if you look at his record historically over these last few years, he's done a pretty solid job. He's just made some questionable decisions over the past few years, but you can't point it solely towards him. So do you think that the Yankees made the right decision bringing him back on such an extensive contract?
What a question to start the podcast. Do I think the Yankees made the right decision to bring Aaron Boone back? I think this past Yankee season and the term that Aaron Boone has been the Yankee manager, so much can be looked at. And I feel like, Eddie, where we can't sit here and say the Yankees only made it to a wild card game and didn't make it past this year is solely placed on Aaron Boone. You look at the roster construction, I think the Yankees were kind of hampered with the fact they had a power-heavy lineup. They didn't have athleticism as their forte, as what we've seen so far. The Dodgers and Atlanta, as well as the Red Sox and Houston, have a much more well-rounded lineup. And I feel like the Yankees, their bullpen was their strength at the very end of it, which has been surprising. I think overall, the Yankees going forward, Aaron Boone as their manager makes sense because it seems like the Yankees have their commitment to the fact that if they weren't going to bring Aaron Boone back, it would have been someone who has a lot of qualities of Aaron Boone. They weren't going to go out and get a Buck Showalter. They weren't going to go out there and get a guy that has the same sort of philosophy as a Tony La Russa or a Dusty Baker, right? Or even Alex Cora, you can make the argument, to where this is a team that is committed to using analytics to however the Yankees front office staff value the use of analytics in today's game of baseball. I think what the most interesting component is, Brian Cashman only has 1 year left on his contract. And as you mentioned, Eddie, the contract to Aaron Boone is 3 years. So you would think that the pairing would have been similar to Brian Cashman, because this is a Brian Cashman hire and a Hal Steinbrenner hire. And I wonder if that means that Brian Cashman will also get some form of an extension, and to where, the Steinbrenner family is saying, okay, you got 3 more years. And it's a long leash in New York. But plans change, so we shall see. But it is interesting that Aaron Boone definitely is back for the 2022 season. And we'll see what happens with the roster construction. A lot of things can take place over the next few months, as we all know in the game of baseball, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot of speculation with these Yankees. And one last thing to remember, too. Aaron Boone was the manager. They didn't have as many injuries this year, but thinking about 2018, 2019, 2020, they had to battle through injuries, really have piecemeal lineups throughout the summer, and he was able to keep these teams afloat. So as much as some people might complain about Aaron Boone and how they've struggled to get far in the playoffs, he certainly got them in the right position throughout the regular season in the past. And like you said, it'll be interesting to see how Brian Cashman and player moves work into this offseason for the Yankees. But let's stay in the AL East, because one of the most shocking things from this baseball postseason is that both number one seeds knocked out in the division series. And you start in the American League first with the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, they caught the Boston Red Sox at a bad time. We know the Red Sox are red hot right now, really right through the last week of the regular season and all through the postseason so far. But Tampa Bay, of course, had expectations that they would go far and maybe even make a return to the World Series, and it didn't happen. And they were really flat-footed after that first game of the series when Randy Arozarena clutched up. So with Tampa Bay now, of course, now they're going to be 2 years removed from that World Series run and a crushing defeat after a 100-win season this year. Where do you see Tampa going forwards into 2022?
Honestly, Eddie, I think the Tampa Bay Rays are going to still be the Tampa Bay Rays. What they've been able to do to have players buy into their role, right, to where there are no egos. Egos don't fit in Tampa Bay. And what they've been able to do, they've been able to take guys from all over the league and to place them in their roles, and that's how they've been able to be so successful. They won 100 games. Yes, they were one of the upsets, right, that didn't make it past the divisional series. The Brewers on the other side, that was a major upset, in my opinion. The Rays and Brewers not making it to the championship series. But still, the Rays, just what they've been able to do, the athleticism that they have, and like you said, not only did they catch the Red Sox at a wrong time, but they also caught themselves at a bad time. Their pitching, Glass now hurt, and their pitching depth not to what they came into the season with. So it should be interesting to see how they can be when their full staff is healthy. I think it would have been a different scenario if Glasnow was healthy. That's their race. They traded Blake Snell because they have Glasnow in the pitching depth, but when Glasnow goes down, it kind of shifts things back a little bit for the Rays there. And just what they've been able to do analytically, I don't think that's why they lost, right? You saw, I bet, the movie Moneyball, and the famous line Billy Beane says, that stuff doesn't play in the playoffs. I don't think that's why the Rays lost. I think it's just simply because Boston was playing better, and they were the hotter team at the time they were playing the Rays. But also the pitching depth and the injuries did hamper the Rays. I think the Rays, going back with the Yankees here, the Yankees are in a tough spot. In my opinion, they are the fourth best team in the division as of right now. The Tampa Bay Rays, the Boston Red Sox, and the Toronto Blue Jays, in my opinion, are a better team than the New York Yankees. And the Rays lead the division. I think they still are the better team as of right now. They'll look certainly like the Red Sox are. They're now just 2 wins away from making the World Series. So the Rays, I think, just need to be the Rays. I think they don't have to do too much over the offseason, but just bolster up that pitching depth just a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. With Tampa Bay, it's interesting to see how this team has been constructed over the years. And it's often, and we've talked about it on the show before, how their roster, they take on players who kind of become journeymen and come from other teams and didn't really work in their minor league systems. And then they show up in Tampa. And that team, of course, has been scouting so well, and they make things happen with their roster. So I want to shift gears now to the National League, because the San Francisco Giants also a number one seed. And I don't want to call it a fluke year at this point with the Giants, because they did still win 107 games, and they took the Dodgers to a game 5, a competitive game 5 at that. So the Giants definitely were one of the top teams in baseball this year. Of course, having to play the defending World Series champs in a division series isn't ideal, but it was still a great year for them. And of course, way beyond any expectations people had going into the season, who thought that it was going to be a 2-horse race between the Dodgers and the San Diego Padres in the NL West. But the Giants, we have seen in the past where they'll have a deep run one year and kind of surprise, of course, when they won 3 World Series in 5 years at the beginning of the last decade. And then in those middle years, they'll kind of fade into oblivion a little bit. So with this Giants team that surprised so many, do you see them making a similar run next year when the Dodgers are still going to be great, and the Padres, I mean, logically you'd think might be able to recover after such a disappointing ending to 2021?
I do. I think they will still be competitive. I think it's going to be tough to win 107 games like they did this year. I think it's tough for any team to go back and win back-to-back years of 100-plus games. It's so difficult to win now in the game of baseball. Every single team, it seems like, outside of a few, improve every single year. And it's just such a competitive game. You saw it all season long. I mean, the fact, Eddie, that in the American League, almost in the National League, you play 162 games, right? And most non-baseball fans really say, really, do you have to play 162? It's such a long season. But you look at the Yankees, you look at the Red Sox, you look at the Blue Jays, the Mariners. It came down to game 162. So when you look at that, the fact of the matter is it is so difficult to win a baseball game in this day and age. So the Giants, is it a fluke? No. They just surprised. Gabe Kapler and the Giants coaching staff, what they were able to do is unbelievable, truly. And they deserve all the credit. Gabe Kapler should be the National League Manager of the Year, period. And just to see what he's been able to do this season, it's unfortunate. Like you said, they had to face the Dodgers, but it was a great series, even though it ended on a sour note for the Giants season. I do believe that they will be back next year, whether or not, I mean, the Padres are in a different place right now. They have to defend themselves a little bit here. They have to win. They're put in a position to win, or else it's going to cost them a lot. They made the trades, they made the deals in the last 2-3 years to win now, and they're not. So that's certainly in a scary spot for the Padres. But what the Giants have been able to do, I do think they would definitely be competitive and certainly a figure in that division to challenge both the Dodgers and the Padres mainly.
So the Giants, of course, lost to the Dodgers, who right now, through 2 games, are on the losing end in the NLCS, back-to-back walk-off wins from the Atlanta Braves, who, for the longest time this year, were 3rd in the NL East throughout June and July, behind the Mets and the Phillies, and lost Ronald Acuna Jr., lost Mike Soroka on his return from the torn Achilles with yet another tear, no Marcelo Zuna, yet this team came together, made some great deals at the deadline to bolster their outfield. Josh Peterson, Jorge Soler, Adam Duvall, and of course, Freddie Freeman has been playing well, and the young pitching staff has been doing its job. And now suddenly they're sitting halfway from an NLCS crown and heading to the World Series. But of course, the series is shifting tonight back to Chavez Ravine with Walker Buehler on the mound for the Dodgers. So it's a 2-0 series lead for Atlanta. But the Dodgers, we know how well they can play at home, and we know how strong their pitching staff is, and that they will never give up, even if they're down in a series. And let's not forget the Braves had an advantage in the NLCS last year against the Dodgers and let it slip away. So heading in for 3 games now in LA, in Chavez Ravine, how can the Braves at least stay afloat and not let the Dodgers steal all the momentum back?
Well, you make a great point there. The Dodgers can do it, and there's arguments to be made here. The Braves are 1-13 in their last 14 games they played at Dodger Stadium. So the Dodgers' momentum, they can easily pick it right back up tonight. The Dodgers win tonight, in my opinion. They got Buehler on the mound. That's the momentum right there. You got Walker on the mound. And if the Dodgers win tonight, it's still a dogfight to win to go to the World Series on either side. A 2-1 lead by Atlanta is very different than a 3-0 lead if they win the ball game tonight. If it's 3-0 tonight, it is a completely different story. But the Dodgers are the most dominant team in Major League Baseball this season. Even though they did have less games than the Giants, they are still, at the end of the day, the most dominant team. You look at that roster and you look at the depth that they have on it. It's just incredible to see what they've been able to do. But you also can make the argument, right, Eddie, that, well, they're paying over $200 million and over $1 billion combined by everyone. They should win it, right? That's the argument. They should win it. Now, baseball is a lot more complicated than just saying, well, they should win it. They're spending the money. Look at the Yankees, right? They haven't won a World Series in 12 years, and they spent trillions of dollars over that span of time. So the Dodgers, I think, will win tonight, and I'm hoping that my prediction is this. I want good baseball, right? I would love 2 Game 7s of both championship series. I don't know if we're going to get that, but my prediction, Eddie, will be Dodgers in 7. So it all relies on Walker Buehler tonight. This is a big game for the Dodgers, but also a big game for the Braves. So I'm leaning towards Dodgers tonight, though. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think the Dodgers are going to steal the momentum back. You said that stat. Atlanta does not play well in Los Angeles, and Walker Buehler has been one of the best postseason pitchers over these last few years and has really filled the void with Clayton Kershaw's injury as a staple in the Dodgers pitching staff throughout these past couple years where they've been making deep playoff runs. So I think LA steals the momentum back tonight. It's going to be really telling, though, what happens with Atlanta. If they can at least get one game of the three in Chavez Ravine, they can feel comfortable going with a 3-2 lead with a pair of games back at SunTrust Park. So should be very interesting to see how it all works out. But I want to shift gears a little bit to the American League Championship Series, where the Boston Red Sox, I mean, it's pandemonium at Fenway Park right now. They've hit 3 grand slams in the series, dominated Houston last night, have a 2-1 lead. Really unprecedented from this Boston team. But the big thing with them has been their pitching staff, which was a question going into the season, especially with Chris Sale's Tommy John surgery coming back and not looking great in his return. But Eduardo Rodriguez pitched a masterful game in Game 3. The Kyle Schwarber move has been huge for this team. They're raking top to bottom in that lineup and now have taken an advantage against Houston and have 2 more games at home coming up. So do you think the Astros can potentially get themselves back into this series, or is just momentum riding too high for the Boston Red Sox right now?
You said it best. The Red Sox swinging the hot bat right now. And Eduardo Rodriguez might be the best pitcher in the game of baseball right now. And the best left-hander, that is. Zach Greinke on the mound tonight for the Astros, right? And he hasn't pitched since mid-September or so. Greinke has been decent. He's going to be 38 in 2 days. He's been also trying to fill the void of a Justin Verlander. And no Garrett Cole, no more on the Astros. Charlie Morton, right? No longer on the Astros. And you can go down the list of all these top pitchers that the Houston Astros used to have that no longer have on the roster right now. Lance McCullers Jr. on the IL, not on the American League Championship Series roster. Maybe he'll be back on the World Series roster if the Astros make it. But still, it's going to be tough for the Astros. But like I said, that lineup that Houston has between Altuve, Bregman, Correa, and just it goes on and on and on of just the talent in that Houston Astros lineup that can still make it a game. I mean, Eddie, you go back to this past weekend when the Red Sox were up 9-1, and the Astros started to try to come back, right? They were threatening up until the 7th or 8th inning, and you're like, man, can this Astros lineup really try to pull off this comeback to make it interesting? And they did at some point in time. So even though, yes, the Red Sox have been able to really put down and put the pressure on the Houston offense here, they've still been able to sneak their way and to somehow make the Red Sox a little on edge, right? To make Alex Cora make a call to the bullpen in a spot to where he'd think he might not have to. So yes, the Astros can certainly sneak their way back in. They have home field advantage. It is so difficult to win games at Minute Maid Park in the postseason. They have tremendous home field advantage, if you ask me. I think better than any other ballpark. When that ballpark is closed in the postseason, it is unbearable to even hear your own thoughts. So, yes, the Astros can definitely sneak their way back in. The Red Sox have the 2-1 lead. Tonight's a big game for both the Red Sox and Houston. It all relies on Greinke. It relies always on pitching in the postseason as to why it is so crucial for teams to have that strong pitching, to have that depth, whether or not you have it in your rotation, but also in the bullpen. Remember, back in 2015, the Royals won the World Series mainly because of their strength in the bullpen. And that was really the first time we saw the huge factor of having a great bullpen, right? That's how the Royals won it back in 2015. And I do think that whatever team has the best pitching wins the playoffs and to win the World Series. But easily the Astros could sneak their way back in, and they might tonight. We'll see.
Yeah, so it should be great to watch. This has been an exciting postseason so far. It's so great that this year we get the full generic regular postseason as opposed to last year's 60-game season with the crazy tournament, which was interesting to see through the first few games, but of course, getting back to the regular postseason, getting into the grind is great to see. Now, one more thing I got to ask you, of course, you just mentioned those Royals, and I see the gut-wrenching image of Travis d'Arnaud being unable to handle that ball in the World Series behind you. So Kansas City heading into 2022. Of course, the AL Central overall has been a down division over these past couple of years. The Twins have really struggled as of late. The White Sox, of course, won the division pretty easily, but then got knocked out of the playoffs pretty handily by the Houston Astros. We don't know what Cleveland is really going to be at next year. The Detroit Tigers look decent, but of course some questions still with their pitching going forwards. But what about Kansas City? How do you see the Royals heading into the 2022 season?
Well, Eddie, I'll be honest. I predicted the Royals would be a wild card team this year. Didn't work out. They looked fantastic in the month of April to mid-May. It didn't work out for the Royals, right? They struggled at times. Their pitching suffered a lot of injuries and setbacks. But man, you talk about excitement level. They had more minor league baseball players named Player of the Year than any other team. I believe they hit either 4 or 5 Players of the Year throughout the minor leagues of baseball. You talk about depth, they have depth. Bobby Witt Jr., Nick Pratto, MJ Melendez yet to have made their Major League roster debut. I'm most excited about Bobby Witt Jr., right? He's such an exciting player to watch. He hit 30 home runs and stole 30 bases at the AAA level and AA level combined this year. It's unheard of, right? To where you have the power and the speed at the same time in this game of baseball. Stolen bases are a thing of the past, it feels like. But what Bobby Witt Jr., just the excitement he brings to the table, I think is just so exciting for Kansas City fans. I think the Royals are where they were at in 2013, right before the cusp of their great years in 2014 and 2015. And they're the last team to win the World Series as a small market team. And I do predict they are going to be the next small market team to win the World Series. I just think that they have so much talent. Salvador Perez deserves another ring, right? Whit Merrifield deserves a ring. And what both of them have been able to do, even in years where they haven't had the best years as of late, they have the most potential out of any other team right now with their young talent on their way up to the big league roster.
Yeah, I mean, Salvador Perez was just crazy this year with all those home runs. I mean, nobody saw that coming, but should be great to see how this all plans out in the playoffs and heading into the offseason. Alex Feuz, we really appreciate having you on here on SportsBeat. Where can people find you and your podcast?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Alex Feuz, and you can listen to a whole new ball game where my co-host, his name is Vinny Pasquantino, and he's a top prospect in the Royals minor league system. Vinny had more home runs and extra base hits than strikeouts this year. So he had more extra base hits than strikeouts. Also unheard of by a Major League Baseball or professional baseball player in this day and age. Vinny's great, and we interview people in the game of baseball, and it's a lot of fun. But Eddie, thanks for having me. You're great, and I can't wait to see all the great things you do in this great industry of sports broadcasting.
Well, thanks so much. So that'll just about wrap up our show. One more quick plug. Of course, you can follow along our NFL Weekly Pick'em. Tim Moore and I did not do so good this week. I went 1-2. Tim's got a 3-game lead right now, but you can follow on Twitter at SportsSpeak Live as we make our picks for Week 7. But until next time, we hope you enjoyed. I'm Eddie Kalegi signing off on SportsSpeak. We hope you have a great rest of your day.